Alright, hey guys, Nocturne here. Welcome to the affiliate stream. It took me 70 streams, but I'm finally there. Thank you everyone for the support you gave, I really appreciate it. Because this is really the goal I was working towards this year. Let me get that music out of here, because we don't really need it right now. Okay, now when I started OBS, it said that there was a problem with getting a token from Twitch, so I don't know if stuff's gonna work correctly. I know it says no viewers on my OBS screen, but I know somebody Metman just sent a message, so I know people are watching. So if things don't work properly, I'll get them fixed in time. I have emotes for subscribers. I don't have tier 2 or tier 3 emotes yet. I gotta get working on those. Gotta commission somebody. And, well, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna talk about the various villains that have been in the mainline Final Fantasy games. So, let's get started. The first one I want to talk about is, we might as well talk about the very first one. Let's see, where is he? There he is, Garland from Final Fantasy 1. Now, we got the first guy here. I know he's the first boss, and he doesn't show up at all until the very end of the game. Spoilers for a 30-year-old game, by the way. But he is pretty much the main villain because he sets all of the events in motion. It's because of him that the 4 fiends were sent out into the world, and the 4 fiends sent him back in time. So basically, I like him because his plan wasn't to destroy everything or take over the world or anything like that. He just wanted to be immortal by being in a constant 2,000-year time loop, which was nice because it tied in together the different like sci-fi elements that were in the original Final Fantasy. Because there was a lot of sci-fi in the original Final Fantasy. It wasn't just straight up a fantasy game. There was the whole floating castle where you fought Tiamat that had robots in it. It had a sci-fi look to it. Sure, you didn't get any sci-fi weapons or anything like that, but it still had a nice mix to it. I didn't play Final Fantasy on the NES when it first came out. I didn't really get into role-playing games until the first Pokemon came out in, like, what was that, 98? So a bunch of these went by. I didn't really play them until much later. But I really enjoyed the first one. Not playing it on the NES, though. I prefer to play it on the PSP with the Anniversary Collection, or the Game Boy Advance, the Dawn of Souls version. I have a ROM hack of the original that fixes all of the bugs and all the crap that was wrong with it, because half the damn game didn't work on the NES when you first got it, when it first came out. Of course, once the game was out, it was out. There wasn't like patches or anything like that. So you were stuck with what you had, and what you had was a game where half the shit didn't work. Now, let's see here. Yep, I got 2 people watching, even though it says no viewers on the top. It's kind of annoying. I probably won't take the full 2 hours. I don't know, we'll see how it goes. Time's kind of tight today. I didn't realize I had work when I did. So we'll just see how it goes. But yeah, Garland. It's funny because in the NES version it's not explicitly clear where chaos comes from, but in the GBA and PSP versions they actually show Garland transforming into him, so you know that Garland is actually chaos. He doesn't like summon him or anything like that. They're the same person. So you fight him as the first boss, and you fight him as the last boss. You know, not a bad start. He's a pretty cool villain. He has some goofy lines, which I like. You know, where he says he'll knock you all down and stuff like that. But yeah, he's a pretty cool character. I like his design as well. You know, the typical Black Knight type character. Let's see. let's move on to a game where I hate the gameplay of it, but I really like the story of it. This guy, Emperor Mateus from Final Fantasy II. Now, I am not a fan of Final Fantasy II. I really can't stand playing it. I don't like the fact that you don't have a level up system, where it's more of a saga type game, where the more you do certain things, the more those things will level up individually and independent of each other. In fact, the guy who was the director of Final Fantasy II went on to make the Saga series, so he got his chance to do his thing on his own. But yeah, the gameplay I'm not a big fan of. Usually what I do when I play Final Fantasy II, if I actually feel like it, is I will get rid of everybody's weapons and just have them punch everything to death, because those level up incredibly fast, and it won't take long for you to be doing like triple digit damage in the early game if you do it that way. It just breaks the game pretty much, which that's fine with me, because the less I gotta play of Final Fantasy II, the better. I do like the story a lot though, because it's very bleak, it's very much a downer type story. There's a lot of death and war in it. I mean, the very first fight you do, the four main characters get one-shotted, so it sets the tone right away that this game isn't going to be the same kind of bright and cheery thing as the first game was. I mean, there's one point where you see towns getting like carpet bombed and stuff, and you actually have to go in them, and you see the devastation around because there's ruined buildings, there's all kinds of shit going on there. This doesn't have a script, as you can tell, so I'm probably going to sound like I'm rambling. I probably should have picked something better. Yeah, that too. The main character is the fourth one, Leon. He disappears for a while, and you kind of get like a rotating cast of people that come in. They're always like behind you though. And then by the time Leon finally does show up, he's so woefully far behind everybody else, it's like, you know, why even bother? But that ties in more with the like level up system that I'm not a really big fan of. Like I said, I much prefer a regular, you know, level up thing. Yeah, I mean, I can see they wanted to try something different. I mean, Nintendo notoriously always did something incredibly different for their second game. I mean, you can look at the difference between Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. The difference between, well, Mario 1 and Mario 2 doesn't really count, because that was more on the American side when they brought that Mario 2 over. And yeah, they tried to change things up because they were worried that people didn't want the same exact thing. So they changed the mechanics around. Some people like it, and those people can play, you know, the Romancing Saga games or Saga Frontier, Unlimited. There's no shortage of Saga games they can play that have that kind of level up system for them, but it's not for me. But yeah, I mean, there's one point where you actually do defeat this guy. He goes down to hell, he picks a fight with the devil and wins, and becomes the ruler of hell, and that is the second half of the game. He raises the castle Pandemonium out of hell into Earth, and you gotta go through it to try to fight him again. That is really badass. I love it. I mean, they mention in the beginning that he's using monsters from hell in the first place to invade the world, whatever it's called. They don't give it a name. They usually don't give the worlds in Final Fantasy games names, except for a very few specific cases. But yeah, that's the Emperor. He's pretty badass. I like him a lot. Let's move on. Go away, you. Final Fantasy 3. One more. Xand. Now again, I'm talking about the villains, not the final bosses. There's a big difference in some cases. In this case, Xand is the one that you hear about a lot, Cloud of Darkness doesn't show up until the very, very end. So Zand is the one who I want to talk about. So in the story of Final Fantasy III, there was a legendary wizard. He had 3 students. There are 2 of them got good gifts. One got the ability to go into dreams. That was Une. Dine, I believe his name was, got the ability of casting magic. And Zan got the gift of mortality. So, you know, he didn't take it very well, the fact that he was actually going to die someday. So he decided to plunge the world into chaos by overloading it with dark energy. Because in the world of Final Fantasy, there's a light world and a dark world, and there's a whole thing like that. But yeah, he shows up. He doesn't show up until the end either, but you hear about him a lot more than you hear about the Cloud of Darkness. The Cloud of Darkness you don't hear about until after you actually fight Zand and beat him the first time. And then you get your ass kicked by it. But I like his design. He's pretty cool. He's got, if you look in real close, he's got like a little cat belt buckle in the middle there. I think that's funny. And yeah, Final Fantasy III is a pretty good one. It goes back to the regular level up system. It goes back to having spell charges. And though it lets you have more than 9 spell charges per level spell. It even lets you have up to like 99. So I think it's a lot more fun that way. And it was the first one to do the job system, which I like a lot. I played the Pixel Remaster. It's pretty good. I do enjoy the Pixel Remasters of the games. I'll get into that right now. Might as well. They're fun if you want to play it in an official capacity, because they do improve a lot of stuff and make a lot of quality of life changes. Like, for example, for Final Fantasy III, there's no capacity points anymore. You can switch your jobs whenever you want. And they don't have that stupid cooldown period that the DS remake had, where if you switch a job, you have to fight like 5 battles for your stats to readjust. Yeah, that does. It would be nice if they did that. I know they're Steam only, but I don't know if they're ever going to bring them to console. They would be nice on the Switch, I could tell you that much right now. But it's probably not going to happen. They're probably going to stay on the PC. I mean, if you don't want to play the Pixel Remaster, I would go to the NES one and grab a translation and play it that way, because the translations still hold up. Either one you pick. There's one NES translation that gives the characters the names from the DS remake, and there's one that's more of a straight translation. Either one is fine. Yeah, I like it. In fact, the NES one is probably the one that I play the most. It has the capacity points, but that's not that big a deal because you don't really switch jobs that often. It's not like you're going to switch them every 5 seconds. Although my one gripe about Final Fantasy III is the times where it makes you forcibly switch to a certain job in order to complete something. Like the whole dungeon where you have to be Mini really sucks. I don't like that part because I like to have 2 fighters and 2 mages, but you have to make everybody a mage because otherwise, you know, you're not going to be able to do any damage in the Mini area. Oh yeah, Black Belt's my favorite job in the first game and in the third game. Especially the first game, because my god, in that first game, when you do Black Belt and you start leveling up, you can do like up to like 900, 1000 damage to stuff. Especially in the PSP version and the GBA version. I think out of the 2, I would pick the GBA version. That's the one that I like the most. I don't care about all of the extra dungeons and stuff like that. I usually skip those. So, the Final Fantasy 1, officially, I would definitely play the Pixel Remaster of that one. Because the Pixel Remaster doesn't have any of the bonus dungeons, which I could care less about. And the one major thing that the Pixel Remaster of Final Fantasy 1 has that's better than the NES one is it has ethers. So you can actually restore your magic without having to stay at an inn or use a cabin or anything like that. You can actually restore magic while you're walking around, and it's good for the last area because you can't get out of there unless you want to do the entire thing all over again. And it makes you, you know, actually use magic while you're in the final dungeon because you don't have to save it all up for fighting chaos at the end. But anyway, back to Xand. He got shafted by his teacher, he got mad, and he wanted to destroy the world because of it. So the first three, there's not really that much story to them except for the Emperor, because the Emperor is the only one that you actually interact with throughout the entire game. I mean, you see him several times, you fight him in the middle of the game and kill him, and then you have to fight him again when he comes back. Excuse me 1 second, I'm gonna get something to drink. I'll just leave it on here. I'm gonna start changing in size for a second, don't be alarmed. Oof, I'm back. So yeah, Emperor, he got his name Mateus from a book that they did. So really, he was just the Emperor in the vanilla game. I don't know if the Dawn of Souls remake used the name Mateus or not. I don't remember. It's been a long time. I remember that. Oh yeah, there's a PlayStation version as well of the first two games. How could I forget? That was the first time I actually really sat down and played them. When Final Fantasy Origins, that was Origins, came out. It had the first one and the second one. The first version, the version on that one of Final Fantasy 1, that was when they kept the spell charges system for magic for Final Fantasy 1. It didn't convert it to MP like the GBA version did. It was a pretty fun version. Of course, you know, there were loading times and stuff like that, but it was a CD-based system, so that's how it goes. Alright, that's enough about him. Get lost. Next, let's talk about a Final Fantasy that I can never really get into that much, even though I know it's a good one. And it's a lot of people's favorite. Here he is, Golbez from Final Fantasy IV. I know it's a lot of people's favorite Final Fantasy because for a lot of people it was their first one, because it was the second one that they brought over here. It was Final Fantasy II. But every time I try to play it, I find myself getting bored with it up to the point where you get to that desert town and have to go find Rosa, which is about an hour or so into the game. So I mean, that's how that goes. I know it's a really good one. I'm not saying it's a terrible Final Fantasy. It's a good one. It's just I can't really, for some reason, I can't really get into it. I usually bail way before Cecil becomes a paladin. But we got Golbez here. I mean, look at that design. He's got badass black armor. He has his own theme song. And he just looks like a guy who gets shit done, you know? Let's see. That's because you're a physical attacker. Yeah, there's a lot of magic users in Final Fantasy IV. I mean, pretty much everybody knows magic in some capacity. I mean, when Cecil becomes a paladin, he gets a few white spells. I mean, of course, Rosa, she's the white mage. You've got... Oh my god, it's been such a long time. The Rydia, whatever her name is. She's got summons and black magic. You got the two kids, Palom and Polum. They have magic. Yeah, there's a lot of people slinging spells around in Final Fantasy IV. Yep. Tella Fusui. I think the only person who doesn't use magic at all is Kane. Because even Edge uses his, like, ninja abilities. And those are kind of like spells because they're on a separate menu and stuff. So yeah, I think Kane is the only one who doesn't use magic, period. And Sid, I believe. And I think you get to play as him. Oh yeah, the Yang, the monk. He doesn't use magic either, I don't think. But yeah, you get a whole lot of mages. And then, of course, you know, Golbez, he stomps around in his armor, you know, takes people hostage, gets shit done. And in the end, you know, it turns out he was the main character's brother all along, which, I mean, that's kind of cliche, but hey, you know, that cliche wasn't around that often because this came out in like came out like what, 93, 92, something like that. I know it came out pretty fast after the SNES came out over here. But yeah, I like his design a lot. You know, like the typical Black Knight. Hey Faithy. You can. You can ask questions and try to contribute and stuff like that. You can say stuff. You can comment on their design. Anything is fine. Because the whole thing I wanted to do with this is there to be a discussion. So, like, the chat people are talking about it, too. See how they feel about the villains. But I'm guessing you're not too familiar with Final Fantasy if you're pretending. That's okay, too, though. Because, I mean, a lot of the later guys, you can glean stuff from osmosis because I'm sure you've heard of at least some of these guys in just wandering around on the internet. Probably not the next person, though. And I got a lot to say about the next person because he's probably one of my personal favorites. Oh, that's okay. You know, that's how it goes sometimes. I mean, they're long-ass games. I mean, I'm not going to fault somebody for not wanting to put the time in to complete like a 20 to 30 hour game. And that's for the early ones. That's not getting into the later ones. Well, let's bring up... Where is he? There he is. X-Death from Final Fantasy V. Here's another one where you spend the entire game with him. He's not someone who just disappears at the end and then someone else comes in to take over. And I like him because he's evil, he loves it, and he doesn't give a shit about what anybody else thinks. If he had a mustache sticking out of that helmet, he'd twirl it. And sometimes I like that in a villain. Just someone who does not care at all and who is gleefully evil. I'll put it that way. And he's kind of dumb. Which is probably my favorite aspect of him. I mean, his backstory is kind of stupid. He was a tree that was full of evil souls that turned into a man. At one point, he disguises himself as a splinter and gets lodged into a character's finger and uses that to infiltrate an area so he can try to kill somebody. I mean, that's a really stupid plan, and I love it. And Final Fantasy V, that was the first Final Fantasy I ever played from start to finish. I had the PlayStation version when Final Fantasy Anthology came out. Oh yeah, Gilgamesh is amazing. He's like the one character who actually pops up in other Final Fantasy games when they try to keep the worlds as separate as possible. The only other one being someone I'll get into when we talk about our next person. I am going in numerical order. I'm not going to skip around. So, you know who's coming next, but we'll get into that when we get into that. We're talking about X-Death right now, whose name was spelled in several different ways. I remember in the PlayStation version, it was X, the letter X hyphen death. I believe one of them just had X-Death all as one word, but the Pixel Remaster and the more recent things, they have it as EXDEATH, all as one word, and that's pretty much what it's supposed to be. I'm pretty sure that's what it was in Japanese. But I mean, look at this guy. He's huge. He's fully armored like Golbez. He's got big shoulder pauldrons sticking out. And he's a wizard that uses a lot of different magic spells, so he's pretty cool. And you fight him a lot through the game. I mean, the Emperor in Final Fantasy II, you only fought him like twice. Once when he was normal, and then the second as the last boss. But this guy, you fight him like 3 or 4 times. You fight him once when you get to him in his castle. And basically you fight him again when you're inside that tree. That's when Galuf, the old man, stands up to him and does a one-on-one fight with him and loses, and that's when you get Creel into your party, which is nice that they just transfer everything over to her. They don't make you have to like level her up again and stuff like that, because Final Fantasy V brings job classes back, and those have their own individual levels as well. So, like, you're playing the game, you spend a lot of time leveling up Galuf, and then he dies, and you're like, well, what now? But it just transfers everything over to the new character, and it's just like, oh, she inherited all of his fighting ability. So you're like, oh, good, I don't have to spend another 10 hours building her up again. And I like the story of Final Fantasy V. There's a lot of more, like, silly elements in it, which I enjoy. Because as much as I like Final Fantasy II with how serious and bleak everything is, I do like when a story can just cut loose with silly bullshit and just go with it and not make a big deal out of it. Like, there's a scene where Exdeath is fighting a turtle, and they're flying around like Dragon Ball Z characters, slamming into each other. It's pretty funny, and it's pretty awesome. But yeah, you fight Exdeath. He's a tree. He turns into a giant tree at the end, and that's the first form of the final fight. Then he turns into a melty god monster, like a lot of these final villains do. I never understood that. Why would the ultimate form of something that you're fighting be some kind of melty, squishy amalgamation of bodies, organs, and meat? That seems like not ultimate at all. That seems like something that would be very easily destroyed. Nope. Yep. I see it out of the corner of my eye. Okay. Now, before I was rudely interrupted. For those of you wondering on the YouTube VOD why I just went silent for a few moments, you can see in the chat I had an ad break, and there were 3 of them, so I wanted to not talk while the ad break was going on. So anyway, as I was saying, let me see. Before the ad break happened, I was talking about... Oh yeah, I was talking about how I think it's funny that ultimate life forms and final bosses in games become just like gross amalgamations of body parts, meat, and organs. That shouldn't really be a final form for anything, because it seems like that wouldn't be very strong. It just seems like it would be a big sloppy mess. But, you know, that's how it goes. Oh, one thing I hated about the PlayStation version of Final Fantasy is with Faris, they really went overboard with her talking like a pirate. I mean, it was all like Avasci mateys, and literally she says that at one point, and it's just really overboard with it. That's why I like the newer translations. They only sprinkle it in a little bit here and there, but she sounds more like how a normal person with an accent would talk, not like a stereotype, because it was really bad in the PlayStation version. And that was the way I ended up playing the game for the first time. So when I found the Pixel remaster, which is really good. The GBA version, they do the voice well. And there's newer translations of the Super Nintendo version that tone down the ye old pirate speak a lot. So you don't have to really muddle your way through it because it's bad. I mean, it almost turns to the point where she's like comical, where she's not supposed to be. Okay, let's see. Well, let's get to character that everybody's probably going to want to hear about. Let's get rid of him. And let's bring up... You know who's coming. There he is. Look at that magnificent bastard. Oh, I've already streamed the Pixel remaster of Final Fantasy VI, and I'm going to stream the original one. Yep, there he is. The clown himself, Kefka. Here's another one who is evil, and he loves every second of it. Like, gleefully evil, like X-Death, although Kefka much, much more. Oh yeah, I love the original art for these characters. It's funny how much sometimes it differs because of the limitations of the console. But yeah, it's Kefka. The only Final Fantasy villain who wins and gets what he wants halfway through the game. The only one who succeeds in his plan, so I have great respect for that. I mean, he's awesome. When you first see him, he has his theme going, which sounds like a circus from hell. He's telling people to brush the sand off of his boots while he's walking around in a desert, so you know he's a little nuts. And he's just really a slimy, disgusting villain, and I love every second of it. Some of the things that he's done, he poisons an entire castle, even though he was explicitly told not to by the people he's working with. He basically captures Terra, puts her in a mind control helmet, and makes her kill people. And makes her not only serve the Empire, but kill soldiers of the Empire as well to test her abilities. And oh yeah, he brings about the entire apocalypse just on a whim. He gets mad that he was stabbed by Celis, so he takes the 3 statues of magic that are supposed to be perfectly in balance and just starts shoving them around, even though he's told that that will destroy the Earth. But he doesn't care. He just wants power. He wants power, and he wants everything to die. He was the start of the... Well, no. Neo X-Death was the start of the villains who are nihilists trope in Final Fantasy Final Villains, where they just want everything to be destroyed and everything erased because they don't see the point of it. When you have your big dialogue with Kefka right before you fight him at the end, he goes on a big diatribe about how, you know, it's pointless to live because, you know, you're going to die anyway, so what's the point? And he just doesn't understand that it's what you do while you're alive that counts. It doesn't matter what happens afterwards. Like, he physically cannot understand that, so he's trying to destroy everything just to prove a point. He becomes the god of magic. You fight him as like a giant purple angel guy in a toga, and his music is awesome. Final Fantasy VI is my favorite Final Fantasy game because of the story and the characters and the gameplay. It's one of the few times where all three of them come together that I really, in a way that I really enjoy. And I mean, to me, the game is a masterpiece. I really can't explain about it more. Oh yeah, even Nobuo Uematsu said that Final Fantasy VI is his favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack that he worked on. So, I mean, there you go. That's from the man himself. Let me scroll my other screen over a bit so I can see when those sneaky ads pop up and stop talking. Let's see. So yeah, the game is great, but that's another one where if there's one fault I would have for the game, it's that once you get Magicite and start teaching people magic, the game is basically over. Because you're in a world where magic didn't exist for 1,000 years, so once it starts getting reintroduced, magic is absurdly powerful in Final Fantasy VI. I mean, it doesn't seem like it at the start. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'll get into that in a second. But yeah, at the start, magic doesn't seem all that powerful, but once you start learning the higher level spells and things like that, it's basically over. I mean, Ultima is like the win button for 90% of the battles you're going to fight. And yeah, when it was released as Final Fantasy III here in the US, it was broken as shit. I mean, there was a lot of stuff wrong with it, but the Pixel Remaster fixes a lot of that, which that's a good version of it. And if you want to go down the SNES route, if you track down the Final Fantasy VI Ted Woolsey Uncensored Edition, that's a really, really good way to play it, because it fixes all of the bugs, it changes some of the translations around so it's more close to the Japanese, but it still keeps the flair that the American version had. Like, I mean, in the Pixel Remaster, Kefka doesn't say "son of a submariner" when Figaro Castle tunnels underground, and that's something that, you know, it's an iconic line from the thing. That would be like, I should check if the Pixel Remaster removes the line "You Spoony Bard" from Final Fantasy IV. That's like a iconic line that you shouldn't touch, and they got rid of it in Final Fantasy VI. I forget what he says, but it's not the same thing. I think he says like "son of a sandworm" or something like that. Yep, that's the line. Complete with him jumping up and down because he's angry and upset. But yeah, he's just a fun villain. I mean, he's got, and you fight him a lot too. You basically, when I play Final Fantasy VI, I consider the game to be in 3 acts. Act 1 is everything up until the fight in Narsh for the Esper, where you split into 3 parties and you fight Kefka at the end. I consider that Act 1. Act 2 is everything up until the floating continent, and then Act 3 is the aftermath of everything afterwards. Which I like, because if you've never played Final Fantasy VI before, you shouldn't be watching this discussion. I probably should put a spoiler tag or something, but you know, it's too late now. And I mean, people should know by now what happens in these games. They're like 20 years old. Not as old as me, but they're old. Yeah, Act 3 is everything after the floating continent, because the whole world is like destroyed. It's called the World of Ruin for a reason. Like, the water's purple and gross, there's no animals around, everybody's in despair. I mean, hell, the game touches on some pretty intense subjects as well, like suicide and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, all that in an SNES game. It's pretty intense, and that's why I like it so much. It doesn't hold back in the story department. And even though, you might think it's ruined that I just spoiled it, you should still play it anyway. But yeah, once you start getting Magicite into everything and everybody can learn the same spells, they all get pretty much homogenized and they're not as unique as they used to be. I know they have their individual things that they do. Like Edgar has his tool, Saban has his blitzes, but once you start teaching people magic, it's all out the window. Especially once you learn the spells Quick and Ultima. Because if you have the relic on you that lets you cast 2 spells, you can cast Ultima and Quick, and then cast 2 more Ultima spells, which does like, let's see, it would be 9,999 times 3. So that's pretty much going to put whatever you're fighting away, no matter what it is. And you do all that in a single turn before anybody else has a chance to go. So yeah, you can really flatten the game out to make it easy once you get towards the end. But you have to get towards the end, though. It's not a difficult game. So far, out of the ones I've talked about, I would say that Final Fantasy V is the hardest. But that's because Final Fantasy V has a lot of bosses that will counterattack you with things if you do certain things. So a lot of them have like trick fights where you have to fight them a certain way, otherwise they're going to hit you with something that'll either kill you, reset the fight, or disable you somehow. But the other Final Fantasy games don't really have that much. So that's enough about Final Fantasy VI. Let's move on to Final Fantasy VII, the Final Fantasy game that made everybody look at what an RPG was. It made RPGs mainline, and it gave us Sephiroth, a whiny crybaby mama's boy. Enough about him. Let's move on. Alright, I'm kidding. I'm going to talk about him a bit more than that. And yes, I did this entire discussion just to make that joke, because I am funny. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII, I really need to give it another chance. When I was a kid, I played it up to the part where you had to cross-dress Cloud to get into Don Corneo. And since I was a dumb kid, I was like, ew, I don't want to do that. Why would I do that? And I stopped playing it, before I found out things about myself later in life. So I really should give it a chance, but I'm not a fan of Sephiroth at all. I mean, yeah, he's got a sword that's stupidly big. He's got the white hair. He's got the music. But really, deep down, he is a whiny crybaby who never shuts up. Like, I really don't like his character at all. He whines and cries about his mom. He whines and cries about the planet, wanting to take it over, turn it into a spaceship. And most of the time, that Sephiroth, it's not even him. It's just a chunk of Genova that was floating around. His real body is deep inside the North Crater. So you never really fight Sephiroth until the very, very end of the game. Oh, what is he like in Crisis Core? Because I've never played that. Isn't that the one where there's like 3 of them? There's the one, and then there's the one in red, and then there's the other guy. Oh, okay. Yeah, I figured he was probably still a whiny crybaby. Oh no, I will admit, Final Fantasy VII was good because it really brought role-playing games into the mainstream. Before that, role-playing games, even up to Final Fantasy VI, was like a niche market that people really didn't care about. That's pretty funny. But yeah, the Final Fantasy VII did a lot for role-playing games. I will admit, I will never not admit that. It's just that, I mean, my God, look at him. Look at his design. It just screams, I'm a whiny crybaby. Like, he's got the shoulder things. He's got the leather jacket. He's got, what are those, knee-high fuck-me boots? He's got sword that's got blood on the end. I mean, come on, man. It's like a 12-year-old goth designed a Final Fantasy character. Yeah, the story is good. I do like the stuff where they do with Cloud, that he is kind of fucked up in the head, that he's not who he says he is at first. It's a front. I do like that. I do like that he has to go on like a journey of self-discovery. And I like the other characters as well who come around. I like Tifa. I do like Barrett. I like how Cloud and Barrett like hate each other at the beginning, because Barrett's like a lunatic about the planet and Cloud calls him out on it because he's not a member of their group. He's not a member of Avalanche technically. He's just there as a favor for Tifa. And I like Eris a lot, especially in the original, where she kind of like backtalks Cloud and makes fun of him and stuff like that. They do that a lot in the remake, which I do like the remake. I'll get into that right now. I wouldn't play it because it's too much like Kingdom Hearts, and I'm kind of Kingdom Hearts'd out. But I do like how they do the story in that one, how they start changing things around. I do enjoy that. So it's more of a reimagining than a remake, which I think is pretty cool. You know what? Go for it. I mean, we've had Final Fantasy VII, we've had sequels to Final Fantasy VII, prequels, we've had that crappy movie, Advent Children, which sucked. But, you know, it makes me laugh that Final Fantasy VII is the one. I mean, I know why they did it, because it was the biggest one to that point, but that was the one that kind of spiraled out of control with merchandising and spin-offs and things like that. I mean, hell, the character Vincent got his own friggin' game. The guy who was an optional character that you find in a basement in a coffin and who turns into monsters and stuff, he got his own spin-off game. In fact, that was Crisis Core, wasn't it? Oh no, Dirge of Cerberus. That was the game with Vincent. Yeah. That was his little spin-off game. But yeah, I like what they're doing with the remake, despite people pissing and moaning about it, that they're changing the story around. I say good. Change it around. Give us something different. Oh, just I don't want to see any. I didn't mention this when I was talking about Final Fantasy IV, but let me tell you something. Final Fantasy IV, the after years, what a load of garbage that is. That's like Final Fantasy fan fiction written by someone who didn't understand the games quite that well. Like, I don't want them to do that with any other Final Fantasy. I mean, it was fine with 4 because I wasn't that big a fan of it. But please, like 6, I don't want them to do a Final Fantasy 6 the after years. That would be horrible. Yeah, I know, but it didn't stay that way. It sure as hell didn't stay that way, because I remember playing it on the Wii and being severely underwhelmed by it. underwhelmed enough that I didn't even finish it. I was just like, okay, that's enough. I'm done with this. I can move on to something else now. But yeah, I know they want to do like other... I don't know where I keep hearing this from, but I keep hearing rumblings of like doing a sequel to Final Fantasy VI, and I'm like, please don't. Just leave it where it is. It ended perfectly. Everybody was happy. Even though the world was ruined, it was starting to heal itself. Everybody got what they wanted. You know, just let it alone. Let it stay in its own self-contained little story and just move on. Ugh. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about him in Final Fantasy VI. He's the other character who pops up in other games because he's a fan favorite. Because he's a big goofball like Gilgamesh. Alright, that's enough about Final Fantasy VII. Oh, this might not take 2 hours. We'll see what happens. Let's move on to a Final Fantasy that is very, very divisive for people. People either love it or hate it. No, I can sum up the plot of Final Fantasy VIII very succinctly with this one. Sorceress Edea, who becomes Ultimecia later. So, Final Fantasy VIII, you're in a school, pretty much. The nice thing about Final Fantasy VIII is you don't have to worry about enemies dropping money. You just get paid every once in a while. Every couple minutes you just get money. The enemies scale up in your level, so no matter where you go, enemies are always a challenge. This can be a good or a bad thing. And the story is you got these kids, they're going on adventures, and it's just a whole bunch of weird shit happening. And it's another world where magic doesn't factor in all that much. You have summons and they give you magic, but then you have sorcerers, which are always female, which I don't know why they're always called oh yeah, sorceress, whatever. I didn't play 8 that much. I'm not that big a fan of it. I really hate it, as a matter of fact. But yeah, you've got the Sorceress Edea. She walks around. She's the main villain for the most part, because her and Ultimecia are the same person, pretty much. And she's another one who succeeds in her plan, like Kefka, because her plan is to do time compression. Yeah, leveling up is weird in that game because everything else scales up with you. So you don't really get a sense that you feel more powerful because, you know, that little blob you fought 12 hours ago when you were level 1 is still the same challenge because now it's level 99, the same as you. And I can't stand Squall. He is so he is so annoying. I mean, I get it. Hell, I was like that when I was a teenager, you know, just saying whatever to everything, not wanting to interact with stuff, and, you know, just thinking everything was stupid. You know, hey, I get it. But, you know, now that I'm older, that kind of personality just really turns me off. And just listening to his whiny bullshit really is off-putting. That's the word I was looking for. But yeah, you know, it's the sorceress. You fight her over three discs, as opposed to just like, you know, one cartridge. They got to spread it over 3 discs, like in Final Fantasy VII, because they can't fit everything on one. Because they want to tell such a big, expansive story, they can't fit it all on a single disc. And then there's the whole "is Squall dead" thing. I mean, I don't care. Dead, not dead, who cares? It's They screw their mission up, and he gets ice through his chest. That's how it goes. But yeah, she succeeds in her plan with her time compression thing where, I don't know, I guess she wants all time to be like a singular point. Something like that. They don't really explain it too well. I mean, just from the words time compression, that's what I figure what it is. I guess all time and all existence focused on a single point or whatever. She probably wants to live forever too, like Garland did. Okay, enough about that. Okay, let's move on. Where... Here he is. Move on to Final Fantasy IX. The last PlayStation one. And with Kuja. The very, very pretty Kuja. Yes. The character who, basically, he said, if I'm going to die, I'm going to take as many as you people with me as possible. So I'm not going to mention Necron, or whatever his name is, because, again, he just shows up at the end, totally unrelated to everything else going on. But Kuja is the main villain of the story, because he's the one who made Queen Braun start attacking places to get more power. He's orchestrating the events behind the scenes, which they show pretty clearly very early that that's what he's doing. And Final Fantasy IX was nice because it was like a big love letter to all the Final Fantasies that came before it, because it was the last one for the PlayStation. And had a lot of good characters too. Like, of course, you know, everybody knows Vivi, the Black Mage. Everybody loves him. The main character is really cool, too. His name escapes me at the moment. Yeah. There he is. Zidane. Thank you. Good discussion. Maybe I should have actually read about this shit before I started. You can tell this is no script. But yeah, Zidane. I mean, he's a flirt and a goofball, but he's a good person. Because he will immediately throw down and help somebody if they need it, no matter what. And no matter who they are. Yep, there's another ad break. 5? Holy shit. Alright. Okay, I'll give it a little bit more time. Yeah. Yeah, definitely after this stream or tomorrow before my next one, I'm definitely going to look into that because that's insane. Luckily, they're not going to show up on the YouTube VOD because I don't see them popping up on OBS. Okay, good. Okay, so anyway, like I was saying, Zidane, he'll throw down and help anybody no matter what. Like when Freya has to go protect her city from Kuja, he just immediately says, well, I'm coming with you. It's not even a question. He just says, I'm coming with you to help you, you know, whether you like it or not. And she just relents because she knows better than to argue with him. So he's a good character. I like that. He's very optimistic and hopeful, which is good to have in a character, especially after Final Fantasy VIII, because good lord, you need a break from that. Oh yeah, Kuja. But yeah, you also, that's another thing where you find out he's the main character's brother, sort of, like Golbez and Cecil. And you fight him, he's all red and evil and mad because he finds out he's gonna die. So he wants to take everything else with him too, because, as he says, why should the world go on without me? That doesn't seem very fair. Which, I mean, hell, that's something we can all relate to, I'm sure. Let me check something while we're talking about Kuja here. Okay. Never mind. I was trying to do a VIP thing, but it won't let me. I'm gonna have to see how to do that. Oh, like I was saying before, I have emotes. In fact, let me spam them so you can see them. They're subscriber only, though, unfortunately. I couldn't do any for, like, regular... You know, like regular emotes. They were expressions that my character has as animations, but since I'm usually playing a game, I can't activate the animation, so I turned them into emotes instead. There they are. There's a normal one. There's a, you know, one where it's like I'm saying what. There's an angry one. There's a pog one, and then there's a scared one. So yeah, those are there for people who subscribe. I'm gonna eventually, well, not eventually, soon, I'm going to find somebody so I can do a tier 2 and a tier 3 emote, because those are slots that are open. And also a maybe some animated ones as well. I got to see how much it'll cost, because I ain't making any money yet. I just set the thing up and nobody's subscribed yet. Not that you have to. It's only if you want to. I'm not telling you that you have to. I would never say that. But yeah, no one's done that yet, so I haven't seen how it works yet, but it should. Anyway, back to 9. But yeah, 9 is a lot of people's favorite because the characters are really cool and they're well written, and it tells a really good story as well. Not just with, you know, between the main story with everything going on, but a lot of the character stuff is really good as well. Like the stuff with Freya and her, you know, boyfriend, whatever, not remembering her because he has amnesia. The whole stuff with Garnet, who they call Dagger, but I just keep her name Garnet. Whenever I play the game, I don't bother renaming her to any code name, because, you know, it's silly that once they reveal who she is, they keep calling her Dagger throughout the rest of the game, so I just leave her as what her name is supposed to be. You got Steiner, the big oaf knight, who's really funny and cool. And what I like about him is he hates Zidane because Zidane is a thief. But you notice that every time he talks with Vivi, it's with the utmost respect, even though Vivi technically isn't like a person. He treats Vivi with the utmost respect, encourages him, you know, cheers him on to do the right thing, that kind of thing. So he's a really cool guy. Then you got Queen Braun. You know, she's a good secondary villain for most of the game. because she looks it. You know, she's got that weird blue face, and you got those two jesters who talk annoyingly. You know, so you just want to punch their lights out, so it all works out really good. Okay. So yeah, Final Fantasy IX, really good. And that's another one that's been re-released. And if you buy it on Steam, you can get like a high-definition texture pack for it, so it looks really good. I don't know if they're still working on it or not, but I've seen demos of it, and it looks amazing. Like, it looks like a 3D Final Fantasy game that was made today almost, because it looks so much sharper and with more detail. But let's move on to the PlayStation 2. So we had the NES, which had two good games and one okay game. Super Nintendo, which had 3 really good games, one of them I can't get into. And then the PlayStation, which had one really good game, one game I can't stand, and another game that I need to give a second chance. PlayStation 2, things start to get a little bit murky for me. Because I did play 10 with our friend here, Seymour Guado. And I remember liking it, but hating the main character. That was another instance where I couldn't stand Titus. I'm not calling him Titus. I'm calling him Titus. Titus is his name because it has to do with water, the tide. I don't care how anyone else pronounces it. He is Titus. And I was not a fan of him whatsoever. Like, he was just annoying, rude, didn't know when to shut up. And even today, playing Final Fantasy X, I don't like him all that much. I do like the other characters, though. Like, I like Yuna a lot, who should have been the main character, but that's beside the point. Auron is great. He's an awesome character. And even the other characters are really good, too. Even if sometimes, like Wakka, they say stupid shit. Like, upon seeing a disaster, Wakka saying that it looks like Happy Festival fireworks. But, you know, he can't help it. He's trying to lighten the mood or whatever, and he's not very smart. So that's how it goes. And 10 was another one that was the first one to get not just a spin-off, but a sequel. We got Final Fantasy X-2, which I like way better than Final Fantasy X because there's no Titus in it. It's just Yuna, Riku, and some emo chick they picked up along the way named Pain. Having fun adventures and dressing up and playing dress up. Even fighting a villain team that's styled after the typical one lady and 2 bumbling henchmen, one fat, one thin. But yeah, Seymour. He's a pretty cool villain. I mean, look at him. Right away, you can tell he's the bad guy. I mean, they don't even try to hide it. The way he talks, the way he carries himself, it's right there. And of course, you know, even though Sin is the main overarching villain, he's not really a character. Excuse me. Sin is more like a force of nature and an entity than an actual character, so I don't really count him. Seymour is the one who you fight several times. And the less said about floating tick Yu Yevon, the better. That was such a giant disappointment when you got there. Like, I consider the final boss to be Jecht, because after that, you can't win. Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad to see that works. Thank you for the subscription. I really appreciate it, Pathy. Thank you so much. I liked Jecht because he constantly called out on Titus on what a little twinkus he was. Just constantly telling him that he's a crybaby. Oh, you're gonna cry now, that kind of thing. I know why he did it. He wanted. Well, he kept dumping on Titus because he wanted Titus to hate him, so Titus would have an easier time killing him when the time came. That's why he did it. I can understand that. But Titus really deserved it a lot. I mean, my God. His stupid Meg Ryan hair and his ugly face. And one thing I'll get into, that laughing scene, I don't get twisted about it like a lot of people do, because the whole point of that scene is they're doing awkward forced laughter on purpose because he's trying to lighten the mood, and Yuna is also trying to lighten the mood as well, so that's why they're doing it like that. A lot of people take that clip out of context because then they're like, oh, this shows how stupid the American version is. Like, well, in the Japanese version it's just as bad because they're laughing for they're trying to do forced awkward laughter, and of course forced awkward laughter sounds forced and awkward, so that's how it goes. So that scene doesn't bother me at all. But just him going around saying this is my story when clearly it's Yuna's story is just annoying and overbearing. The cool thing about Seymour is, like the Emperor, after you kill him, he still hangs around. He still hangs around, and he's still a thorn in your side. Because in the world of Final Fantasy X, Spira, one of the few places to actually get a name. I know Final Fantasy VII, they call the planet Gaia, but that's never actually said in the game. Whereas in Final Fantasy X, they call it Spira, so I think it's one of the only ones where the world actually gets a name to it that's used in the game. But in the world of Spira, if you die, you hang around, basically, until someone does a ceremony to send you to the far plane. So after he dies, he just keeps hanging around and causing problems for them. They have to fight him like 2 more times before Yuna is finally able to send him and make him go away permanently. But yeah, 10 gameplay-wise is very fun. I do enjoy how fast-paced the battles are. I do like the fact that there's that little menu on the side that shows you who's attacking and in what order. And I like the fact that you can just swap characters in and out almost instantly, so everybody can get experience. That's the one thing I don't like about Final Fantasy VI, is when you use characters a lot, unfortunately a bunch of characters are going to get left behind, and they're going to end up like 20 levels behind everybody else. And Final Fantasy VI is a game where you need to have everybody, at least competently leveled, so that way, you use them, because you do have to use almost everybody at the end. And if you have 3 characters who are like level 50 and one who's like level 30 or 29, there's going to be a problem. So you have to use everybody, even though there's going to be people in Final Fantasy VI that you don't want to use. Whereas with Final Fantasy X, you can just switch people in and out instantly, so everybody gets experience. Okay, we're rounding up our discussion here. Well, it'll probably take an hour and a half, not bad. 11 was an MMO, so it didn't have a main villain. Let's talk about, very shortly, Final Fantasy XII. And Vane here. Unfortunately, I have not touched Final Fantasy XII at all. By the time it came out, I didn't really have. I don't think I had a PS2 anymore. I might have, but I wasn't really interested in Final Fantasy because after playing 10 and seeing what the series was heading towards, that it wasn't really turn-based anymore, that it was looking more like an MMO, I didn't want to play it. So I have not touched Final Fantasy 12 at all. So I really can't say anything about Vane. So that's about it. That's enough about him. Oh, also, Final Fantasy 15. Let me bring up this guy. Because I can't talk about 14, because 14 was another MMO. And, Hobo here, Arden, from Final Fantasy 15. I didn't play enough of Final Fantasy 15 to really say anything about him, so I'm not really going to be able to talk about him either. So that just leaves Final Fantasy 13, or Final Hallway 13, if you'd like to get specific. Yeah, that's pretty much the vibe I got from watching a few videos about Final Fantasy 15 story. Because I watched the Clement on YouTube. I've watched his Clement Remembers Final Fantasy series. He's gotten through all of them by now. And even watching his talk about Final Fantasy 15, I got pretty much the gist that from the start and to the end, Arden's pretty much the same. And it's not really that much to write home about. But let's talk about Final Fantasy 13. That's about my take on Final Fantasy 13. A heavy sigh. Where is this? There he is. There he be. The Final Fantasy Pope on his little Pope throne. So, Final Fantasy 13. What hasn't been said about Final Fantasy 13? Well, the fact that it's a good game. That probably hasn't been said very much, because I could not get into this one. Even more than Final Fantasy 4. I think I played Final Fantasy 15 for about like a half hour, and then I was like, nope, done. Took it back to the store, traded it in, and got something else instead. I forgot what I traded it in for. But yeah, I could not get into it. I didn't like the characters. I thought the story was dumb. I thought Snow was stupid. And he kind of is. You've got this, like, moron who's leading a terrorist group. Even worse than Barrett, because at least Barrett was intelligent. Whereas Snow is just a frosted, tipped-haired dumbass who would boast about not having a plan and just going in and doing things. And, I mean, it was just bad. Then there's the whole l'Cie thing that, you know, you're given a focus, but they don't tell you what it is because the l'Cie can't talk. But this guy, he says he's a l'Cie and he can talk. So that just throws the whole story out the window right there. Like, once you have a character who can talk, the whole point of them not telling them what their focus is doesn't make any sense. Because they want them to do the focus, but he doesn't want to tell them what it is, when it's very easy to discern what it could be. I mean, the whole point is he wants them to destroy Cocoon and plunge it into Grand Pulse. That's what he wants, but for some reason he can't just tell them that. I guess because if he told them that, they wouldn't do the plan, but they still try to go after him anyway, even when they figure it out on their own. I mean, even when they figure out on their own what his plan is, they still want to go after him and kill him, even though they know that what'll happen. So, I mean, that's on them. It's just very strange. It's a very bizarre game, and I really couldn't get into it. And for the people who say, after 10 hours it gets better, I'd rather have a game that's good as soon as I press the start button instead of having to wait 10 hours because, hey, time is precious. We don't get that much, so, that's the way it goes. I can't be sitting around being bored out of my mind for 10 hours when I could be doing anything else. And then there's the character Vanille. I mean, she acts like a total space cadet throughout the entire thing. She's a really terrible character. I mean, she's always like jumping around, pulling that one kid all over the place, and just acting like an alien who just landed and doesn't quite understand how people communicate. Like, she knows why they communicate and how, but she doesn't know exactly the nuances of it. What they should have done was make her a l'Cie, so it would have explained why she acted so alien to everybody else, but that would have been clever. So they didn't do that. And that's about all I can say for Final Fantasy 13. It sucks, I hate it, and I don't know why they picked Final Fantasy 13 to give 2 sequels to. That really boggles my mind. Not only did they give it a sequel starring Sarah, Lightning's little sister, but they gave it a third one as well, where Lightning comes back. And I mean, I just don't get it. I'm sure they're popular because they're Final Fantasy, but I mean, I'd rather play Final Fantasy X too if I'm going to play a sequel, because at least that one has fun and is stupid and knows it. The other sequels take themselves way too seriously. Okay, that's going to about do it. But before I go, I just want to thank everybody who followed. Yeah, it did, but if I want to play something with a goofy monster catching mechanic, I'll play Pokemon. But before I go, I just want to thank everybody who followed. I want to thank Pathy for subscribing, and just everybody who supported me while I was doing this. I really appreciate it, and I'm so happy that I made affiliate, because that's the goal I was working towards. It took me 70 streams, but hey, I did it. Now I know what I did wrong. I should have built an audience first and then started streaming. I just started streaming out of the blue before, building an audience first, but, that's how that goes. But I made it anyway, and it was thanks to all of you. And I'm really glad that you guys just listen to me yammer into a microphone while I play ancient video games. I really appreciate it. I might do more streams like this where I'm just talking about stuff. I know I want to do one stream before I play the game of it. I want to read the short story, I Have No Mouth But I Must Scream, because I think it's good to read the short story before getting into the actual game that's based off of it. So I'm probably going to do that, but I don't know, I might do more streams like this where it's just me talking. I might have a script though next time, because I kind of felt like I was rambling a little bit there at some parts. But thank you for watching. Let me throw up my thanks for watching. Thank you for liking, subscribing, watching, doing all that stuff. I really appreciate it. Enjoy the emotes. More will be on the way. And just thank you. I really appreciate it. Let's see who's streaming. Let me stop the local recording.